I would be remiss if I didn't talk or address some of the comments made across the aisle. And while I am incredibly flattered that the ranking member and many members across the aisle seem to be so enamored with a non-binding resolution presented by a freshman congresswoman sworn in 3 months ago, I think that ironically, despite that fixation, it doesn't seem that they've actually read the contents of the proposed and presented resolution. And so I would just, I would encourage that we don't need cliff notes for a 14-page resolution that was designed to be read in plain English by the American people. So I would encourage my colleagues to actually read the resolution presented so that they can speak to it responsibly and respectfully. I would also like to highlight that it is not responsible to complain about anything that we dislike as quote-unquote socialism, particularly when many of our colleagues across the aisle are more than happy to support millions and potentially billions of dollars in government subsidies and carve-outs for the oil and gas and fossil fuel industry. So the fact that subsidies for fossil fuel corporations are somehow smart, but subsidies for the development of solar panels is quote unquote socialist is just bad faith, and it's incorrect. And I think it's important to support and propose the fact that we need bold actions.
Yet again, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez calls Republicans out for their glaring hypocrisy when it comes to the Green New Deal. Because whether it's in bad faith or if these lawmakers on the right haven't bothered to read the 14-page non-binding resolution that is the Green New Deal, the GOP has spent more time disseminating misinformation about it than actually presenting any solutions. All we ever hear from the Republican Party about the Green New Deal is that AOC is trying to ban cows and ice cream and airplanes, none of which the resolution, which is written in plain layman's English, actually says. But again, Republicans clearly know this. They're just relying on the fact that a low information base trusts their representatives not to lie to them. Ironic. But bad faith arguments aside, while the GOP tries to scare their constituents by claiming that everything they're against is socialism, they probably shouldn't be throwing stones. This country spends over $20 billion per year subsidizing the fossil fuel industry. And here's what's worse. When oil is $50 per barrel, half of the taxpayer subsidies go to projects that would have proceeded anyway, meaning that would already be profitable. And when oil is $100 per barrel, nearly every penny of taxpayer subsidies funds a project that would have already proceeded, meaning that would have already been profitable. In other words, when oil companies receive subsidies from American taxpayers, the majority of that subsidy ends up as company profits. But beyond that, there's a social cost to propping up an industry predicated on destroying the planet, conservative estimates of which land at $200 billion per year and $1.3 trillion globally. Think about that the next time that you see a 1,000-year storm, the next time you hear about wildfires and droughts and hurricanes and flooding, all of which have been exacerbated by climate change. And the reason that this continues is that fossil fuel companies now rely solely on Republican lawmakers propping them up. 88% of oil and gas contributions now go to Republicans, and in turn, 97% of Republicans oppose even the most tepid of responses to climate change, a carbon tax on pollution. And that's separate from Trump's decision to prop up the coal industry, dumping $38 million into funding for research for coal-fired power plants. This despite coal continuing to plummet in terms of powering this country, from about 50% 10 years ago to 30% today. Meanwhile, renewables are surging in the country, with 18% of the entire country powered by wind, solar, and hydroelectric dams. All the while, this administration is cutting funding for renewable energy. In other words, apparently it's more important to protect the 53,000 coal jobs than the more than 800,000 jobs in renewables in this country. So Republicans can cry out about the dangers of socialism, and for once, in the case of propping up a dying fossil fuel industry, they'd be right.